Okay, let's jump right in. We've pulled together a stack of recent news reports and sources from June 10th, 2025, and this deep dive is custom tailored just for you.
Yeah, we're going to try and cut through some of the noise.
Exactly. Extract the important nuggets from a day packed with major global headlines. I mean, everything from these really extraordinary claims about a foreign invasion in a U.S. city
Right.
to significant shifts in international trade and even visa policies.
And that's our mission today, isn't it? To help you get informed quickly, connect the dots between things that might seem, well, pretty separate.
Mm.
We're drawing from reports from major news agencies, AFP, UPI, Reuters, Associated Press, Bloomberg, TSSS, Yonhap, also a South China Morning Post report.
And it's really important, like you said, to stress that we're presenting the information as reported in these sources. We're not adding our own spin.
Absolutely, just laying out what the sources said.
So we've got quite a bit to cover. First, we'll really unpack the escalating tensions in Los Angeles. That includes presidential actions, the local response.
It's a complex picture there.
It really is. Then we'll pivot to some major developments in U.S.-China relations, both on the trade negotiation front and a really interesting change to U.S. visa rules. Affects potentially millions of kids.
Yeah, that one's quite specific.
Then we'll touch on shifts in U.S.-Russia diplomatic talks, and finally, look at some legal troubles facing a former South Korean president.
And each of these stories, even though they seem separate, they offer a piece of a larger global puzzle just from this one day, June 10th.
Absolutely. And let's start with Los Angeles, because the language being used in the sources about the situation there is, well, it's incredibly striking. An AFP report from June 10th quotes President Trump.
Speaking at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Right. And he made a truly dramatic claim.
He did. According to that AFP report, President Trump publicly declared Los Angeles is currently under foreign enemy invasion.
Foreign enemy invasion. I mean, that's incredibly strong language.
It is.
And the source reports he described the protesters in L.A. as organized, carrying foreign flags, and aiming to, quote, attack U.S. society via illegal immigration.
And the AFP report also notes he referred to them as animals.
Yeah, animals.
Mm-hmm.
He characterized the situation as anarchy. He said it threatens national sovereignty, public safety.
Mm-hmm. And his vow, as reported, was to use very powerful armed forces to restore order.
What was the reasoning given in the report?
Well, he argued the federal government cannot ignore this, wouldn't let federal agents be attacked or cities conquered by foreign forces. He stated it was time for powerful armed force.
Okay, so based on this foreign invasion claim, the report says he then ordered the deployment of thousands of federal troops.
Yes, including 700 active duty Marines. And this was despite criticism from California Governor Newsom.
Right. The source mentioned Newsom called Trump's actions extreme, dictatorial, likely to make things worse.
That's the reporting, yes.
Now, sticking with President Trump's statements reported that day, he also issued a strong warning about protests planned for this Saturday, June 14th, in D.C.
Ah, yes. Significant date. U.S. Army's 250th anniversary and also the president's birthday.
Right. And the warning.
The report indicates he stated that if anyone tries to protest during the parade, they will face a very powerful force in response. He warned if anyone dares to come out, they will pay a price.
Wow. And the parade itself, the source describes it as the largest in D.C. in over 30 years, with tanks.
Tanks entering the city, yeah. Security is notably high. Road closures around the White House, fully upgraded security status, special national security event, hundreds of metal detectors, drones expected. The whole 9 yards, basically.
Is there reporting on who's planning protests?
The reporting mentions an organization called Against the King announced plans for protests in D.C. and several East Coast spots.
But the White House perspective.
The White House communications director is reported to have said they aren't worried. They expect Trump supporters to be in the majority. And the Federal Parks Police Director also stated that, while they're monitoring plans, they haven't found any major safety threats yet from the protesters.
Okay, let's shift to what was actually happening on the ground in L.A. amidst all this. A UPI report from June 10th detailed a pretty disturbing incident.
Yeah. Early that morning, around 1:30 a.m., a man's body was discovered, intersection of West 3rd Street and Broadway downtown.
And this is an area of recent protests and looting.
Exactly. Police found him unresponsive on the ground, confirmed deceased on arrival.
Do we know who he was or how he died?
The report says his identity and cause of death remain unknown. It's under investigation. And this followed reports of, significant looting and damage to nearby stores the night before.
And arrests. Were there many related to the protests?
Police reported over 100 arrests from the Juneteenth protests, with 14 specifically linked to looting.
Okay. Now, the L.A. mayor, Karen Bass, she held a press conference that morning offering a very different take, right?
Completely different perspective from the federal claims, yeah. She reportedly stated her view that the violent scene isn't, true pro-immigrant protest, but more opportunistic destruction.
And she called for peace from genuine protesters.
She did, called for them to express demands peacefully. And a key insight here, reported by UPI, is that Mayor Bass really tried to clarify the scope. She
Okay.
said the disruption was limited to just a few blocks downtown.
Trying to counter that narrative of the whole city being chaotic.
Exactly, trying to counter the visuals. She emphasized violent behavior won't be tolerated, police are pursuing perpetrators.
Did she raise any other concerns?
Well, one concerning point she raised was that many arrested individuals reportedly hadn't been able to contact their families or lawyers yet. And she also offered a direct critique of the federal approach. According to the UPI report, she said the federal talk of fighting criminals doesn't really align with the scenes of, like, public panic in supermarkets and on the streets that the city was actually dealing with.
So more focused on restoring calm locally.
Right. She called for order to be restored quickly, mentioned plans to work with religious and business communities to clean up, rebuild downtown, especially before next year's World Cup.
Okay, this brings us to an interesting point revealed by Reuters about potential next steps in the federal response. Trump reportedly sent a stronger signal on June 10th.
Yeah, he stated that he is definitely considering using the Insurrection Act if the situation gets worse.
And he views parts of LA as being in rebellion, called protesters saboteurs.
That's what was reported, yes. Rebellion and saboteurs.
So for you listening, the key nugget here is understanding what the Insurrection Act actually is. According to the Reuters report, it's a law.
It allows the president to use federal troops domestically to help maintain order.
So if invoked, the military could perform police tasks, like riot control, making arrests.
Exactly. It would significantly expand the federal military's authority right there in Los Angeles. A very big step.
And adding another layer to this, the Reuters report, citing the LA Times, mentioned a leaked internal letter.
Ah, yes. Tell us about that. What did that reveal?
Well, it details a letter from Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas to Defense Secretary Haggerty, or maybe Hegseth. The report wasn't totally clear on the name last Sunday.
Okay, and what did the letter request?
It reportedly requested authorization for the military to detain or arrest protesters at the protest sites.
Wow. So even before potentially invoking the Insurrection Act.
Right. They were exploring military involvement in arrests. The report notes legal experts reportedly saw this as potentially violating laws against the military doing domestic law enforcement without formally invoking the act.
So a real legal gray area, potentially. What was the DHS response?
DHS's response, as reported, was that the request is awaiting approval. But the fact the letter exists, as reported, shows the federal government was actively considering, quote, more drastic means. Raises serious questions about the legal basis.
Definitely. And this whole situation also really highlighted the public clash between President Trump and Governor Newsom. Reuters detailed this too.
Right. Trump claimed he called Newsom, warned him to do better.
But Newsom.
Newsom denied it flat out on social media, said he didn't get a call, not even a voicemail, criticized Trump's handling, questioned if Trump even knew who he was talking to.
And the confrontation reportedly peaked when Trump was publicly open to the idea of arresting the governor.
Yeah, though there's a fascinating detail here. The source notes the White House boarders are Homan, later walked back that comment to the media, claimed we were taken out of context.
Interesting. Sort of suggests some tension or maybe mixed messaging within the administration itself.
Could be interpreted that way. And this brings us neatly to California's countermove, a legal challenge reported by the Associated Press on June 10th.
Right. Newsom didn't just criticize, he took action. Filed an emergency federal court application that day.
And his goal?
To block the Trump administration's deployment of the National Guard and Marines, specifically to assist with immigration raids in Los Angeles.
Ah, that's a critical distinction.
Yeah.
His argument is that this deployment, about 4,000 National Guard, 700 Marines, is actually intended for immigration enforcement.
Which he strongly opposes, yes. He contends using the military this way will just increase tension, could cause mass clashes, make things worse. So he filed immediately to try and stop it.
Okay, and just for context for you, LA, second largest U.S. city, over 4 million people. And the protests, as Mayor Bass said, really concentrated in a few downtown blocks.
So Newsom's court filing reportedly argued that the Guard's mission changed.
Basically, yeah. That their initial mission was protecting federal buildings, but now involving them in outlying tasks for immigration raids exceeds the original purpose. Warns it could lead to wider conflict.
And the LAPD had concerns too.
Reportedly worried a large military presence could cause public panic, hinder their own efforts to calm residents down.
And the federal government's view on Newsom's request.
AP reported they view it as dangerous, hindering immigration enforcement. There's a court hearing scheduled for this Thursday, June 12th, to decide on it.
Now, here's another interesting wrinkle from the military side. Marine General Smith testified at a congressional budget hearing on Juneteenth.
Okay, what did he say about the Marines' orders in L.A.?
He explicitly stated the Marines deployed there have no orders to engage in handling protests, their mission, solely protecting federal officials and property.
And their training or authority.
He added that while they are trained in crowd control, they lack arrest power.
That statement from the general, it seems to contrast a bit with that leaked DHS letter about potentially detaining protesters, doesn't it?
It does.
And also with another report the AP included.
Yes, this is where the picture gets a bit complicated. A lawyer in California reportedly told the media that the U.S. military had notified them that the National Guard is preparing to assist with immigration raids.
Assist how?
Reportedly includes setting up security lines, maintaining order outside the actual raid areas.
Ah, okay. So maybe not making arrests in the raid, but providing outlying support.
That's the term used, outlying support. So, while the general says Marines aren't handling protests and lack arrest power, the National Guard, according to this lawyer's report, is prepping for a support role in raids.
That discrepancy between the public military statements and the reported planning, that's a key nugget for you to understand the situation. Shows the tension.
Absolutely. Tension between stated roles and potential operational realities, as reported by different sources anyway.
Okay, let's pull back from the domestic situation for a moment. Let's look across the Pacific, U.S.-China relations. Bloomberg reported on trade negotiations happening in London.
Right. U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen left London this evening, Juneteenth, heading back to D.C. for congressional testimony.
But before leaving,
She reportedly described the 2 days of U.S.-China trade talks as having made good progress, with discussions still ongoing.
and these talks were happening at Lancaster House, near Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, historic spot for important meetings. The U.S. team had Yellen, Commerce Secretary Raimondo, Trade Rep Tai, China's side led by Vice Premier He Lifeng,
And the main goal of this round, according to the source,
reportedly to implement the paused tariff agreement reached last month in Geneva.
right, the Geneva terms. China promised more rare earth exports. U.S. considered lifting some tech restrictions.
That's the reported deal. And even though Yellen left, Raimondo and Tai reportedly stayed in the UK to continue the talks. Raimondo commented earlier on Juneteenth the talks were very smooth.
Any market reaction?
News of the progress reportedly gave U.S. stocks a boost that day, hit an intraday high.
Okay, so what about potential U.S. concessions? Did the sources mention specifics?
Sources revealed the U.S. plans to lift restrictions in areas like chip design software, jet engine parts, chemicals, nuclear materials.
Many of those were put in place pretty recently, right, during heightened tension.
Exactly, as reported, yes.
So why would the U.S. consider lifting tech restrictions it just imposed? What's the reported thinking?
Well, according to the reporting, the administration views China's pace on opening up rare earth exports as too slow. They believe it could affect U.S. manufacturing. So lifting tech restrictions might be leverage, to get faster movement on rare earths.
Got it. And the Bloomberg report included an analyst's take.
Yeah, Robert from the Atlantic Council, he reportedly called the U.S. even considering lifting some tech restrictions almost impossible just a month ago. Sees it as a victory for China.
So that's a key takeaway for you. This isn't just technical stuff. Some see it as a real shift in the strategic game.
Precisely. And remember the context. They had that 90-day tariff truce agreed back in May, runs till mid-August, gives them time to sort these differences out.
And one more layer to U.S. trade strategy. The administration is reportedly speeding up talks with India, Japan, South Korea, aiming for deals by July 9th.
That's the report. Aiming for bilateral deals by then. If not, the U.S. might reportedly raise that unified 10% tariff higher, country by country. Suggests maybe a deadline pushing things on multiple fronts.
Shows a kind of multifaceted, maybe pressured approach to trade talks all happening at once.
It does seem that way.
Okay, still on U.S.-China, but moving to something impacting individuals very directly. The South China Morning Post reported a significant change today. U.S. visas for Chinese children.
Yeah, this is quite something. As of June 10th, the U.S. Embassy in China announced it has officially canceled the interview waiver policy.
For non-immigrant visas for kids under 14.
That's right, children under 14. The new rule requires all of them to attend the visa interview in person, at the embassy or a consulate, with at least one parent.
And they need ID. The announcement was on the official visa website. What about applications already in?
Applications before June 10th follow the old rules, but the report says they might still require an interview, so some uncertainty there.
The scale here is just huge, isn't it?
Right.
Estimated 230 million children under 14 in China.
It's massive. This policy change impacts so many families planning U.S. travel, visiting relatives, sending kids to summer camps, that kind of thing.
The SCMP report includes some personal stories from China, right? How are people reacting?
Yeah, quite telling. Ms. Xiao, a consultant in Chengdu, reportedly felt the policy itself isn't very meaningful for actually getting the visa approved. That still depends on the parent's situation. But she questioned the practicality, like, do non-speaking babies really need an interview?
Good point. And there was a mother from Beijing.
Miss Leah. She described taking her baby and another child to the embassy as really troublesome. She'd been told not bringing the 8-month-old might affect approval.
Okay.
But then at the embassy, they told her the baby wasn't needed after all. Said she had to breastfeed in the lobby. Not ideal.
No. And a father from Beijing actually canceled a trip.
Mr. Wang, yes, reportedly canceled his son's U.S. summer study trip specifically because of this new policy. The source quotes him saying he felt the U.S. already doesn't welcome Chinese people and decided on domestic camps instead.
Wow. So those anecdotes really highlight the personal impact and maybe the perception this policy change is creating.
Definitely. It's a notable shift, especially when you consider mainland Chinese students are about a quarter of all international students in the U.S., over 270,000 last year, and many reportedly use those early study trips to prep for U.S. college. This could affect that pipeline.
Okay, switching focus again. TSS reported on June 10th about a change where U.S.-Russia diplomatic talks are happening.
That's right. The new Russian ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, announced that the talks aimed at easing diplomatic tensions. They've moved.
Moved from Istanbul.
From Istanbul, Turkey, to the Russian capital, Moscow. Ambassador Antonov stated the next round will be held shortly.
What's the outlook according to him? Still difficult.
Very difficult. He was quoted saying a full restoration of U.S.-Russia relations will take a very long time. He blamed some opposing voices in the White House, hardline members of Congress, and anti-Russia lobby groups.
So lots of obstacles acknowledged. Any progress mentioned?
Despite the difficulties, he reportedly said there has been substantive progress in some areas. The source notes the previous round was back on April 10th in Istanbul, and that's where they preliminarily decided to hold future talks in the capitals.
So talks are ongoing, maybe some small steps, but still facing major headwinds.
That's the picture painted, yes. Slow, difficult diplomatic work.
Okay, finally, let's touch on a legal development in South Korea.
Yeah.
Yonhap reported this on Juneteenth.
Yeah, this involves the former South Korean president Yoon Suk-yeol. His lawyer made an announcement today.
What was the announcement?
Stated he'll submit an opinion letter to the police saying Yoon will not personally attend police questioning scheduled for June 12th.
And the police had asked him to come in.
Twice. First requested June 5th, got no response, then re-notified him for June 12th. This is the first police request for his cooperation since that 123 emergency incident last December.
And what is he suspected of? What are the charges being investigated?
He's reportedly suspected of ordering the Presidential Security Service to prevent relevant departments from detaining him. That's one investigation.
Okay.
Additionally, he's accused of ordering the deletion of encrypted mobile phone records within the security service on December 7th. That was 4 days after the alleged order to prevent detention. So, suspected of instigating abuse of power related to that.
Yeah, in his position?
The Yonhap report states his side denies all charges. So, his lawyer saying he won't attend questioning. It signals their legal strategy is likely managing this through formal submissions, not direct testimony right now.
Right. Got it. Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into the sources from just one day, Juneteenth, we've really covered a lot of ground.
We really have. From that intense domestic situation in L.A., claims of foreign invasion, federal military deployment, the legal battles challenging it, conflicting accounts.
To those high-level U.S.-China trade talks in London, exploring lifting tech restrictions for rare earths, revealing specific tactics, and how analysts see it.
That very concrete change to U.S. visa rules for Chinese kids, impacting millions, drawing strong reactions.
Shifts in where and sort of the tone of U.S.-Russia talks, showing claimed progress but also deep obstacles.
And then the legal challenges for former South Korean president, the specific accusations, his defense strategy playing out.
What really stands out and what we hope you take away from digging into these sources with us is how interconnected it all feels, you know.
Exactly. The LA situation isn't just a local police thing. It touches federal power, legal interpretations of military roles, even international perceptions around immigration.
And the trade talks and visa changes with China, they directly reflect that huge, complex bilateral relationship.
Yeah.
And they impact specific industries, real people's lives.
Right. Diplomatic shifts show that ongoing, often really difficult work of navigating international tensions. It's not abstract.
So seeing these connections helps you, we hope, move beyond just the headlines and grasp the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing how events that seem far apart can actually influence each other and have real consequences for markets, for relations, for families planning a trip.
Yeah. And as you reflect on all this information, all reported on just one single day, here's something maybe to consider further. How might this convergence, the domestic challenges like LA with these claims of foreign invasion and potential military intervention, how might that, combined with international actions like the change in U.S. visa policy for millions of Chinese children, how might all that shape global perceptions of the United States and its role in the world in the coming months?
That's a really interesting question.
What does this mix of internal tension and outward-facing policy shifts signify about this particular global moment for you? Something to mull over.
It's definitely a complex picture to keep contemplating. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the sources today.
Always a pleasure exploring these reports with you.